I'm excited to introduce you to our next speakers. You'll hear from two creators who have already achieved a great deal so early in their careers, with much more to come. It's my pleasure to introduce Amy Aniobi, executive producer of HBO's Insecure, and Lauren Ashley Smith, head writer and co-executive producer of A Black Lady Sketch Show. Over to you, Amy and Lauren.
Thank you so much, Noni. Hi, Amy. Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Lauren.
This is so cool. It's so good to see you, Amy. I feel like I haven't seen you in forever. And so this is what a pleasure to have a conversation with someone I admire so much.
That's exactly how I feel. I was like, oh, wait, Lauren and I get to just hang out and chat? How can I say no?
Right? It's so perfect.
Exactly. It's a gift. So, I mean, part of why we haven't seen each other in so long is because of the pandemic, things being so crazy. And you and I, you have just finished production on a show that entirely shot during the pandemic. And I'm in the middle of production on a show during the pandemic. It's a headache. So
it's wild.
Yeah. I'd love to know something creatively that you learned during this time, shooting the second season of A Black Lady Sketch Show.
The first thing that came to mind is that I didn't realize how much I used my face to help convey story or communicate with actors and the director to make sure that like the creative of the sketch came through. And I actually found myself, I would go to one actor and be like, I would explain something to them and be like, does this make sense to you? Do you know what facial expression I'm trying to do? And they would do it. And I'd be like, okay, can you show this person? Because they were the only unmasked people. So that was something I really learned. I was like, wow, I didn't know how much I used my person to help get the show to the finish line. What about you?
Yeah. For me, it's, I love the intimacy of giving notes, whispering. I whisper notes a lot. As a producer to the director, as a director to the actors, I love to whisper a note.
Me too.
And yeah, it was a lot of, because hearing between the mask and the visor, like it's so hard to be intimate. And I found myself yelling notes a lot more, which feels weird, but creatively necessary.
Absolutely agree. Had the same experience. And it is so strange because you want to be, you want to have surprises. Like part of the fun of comedy is having surprises and making actors feel comfortable and having just like private moments,
Exactly.
And it's very hard to have a private moment when you're shouting over layers of PPE that we're so grateful and lucky to have. So it really was a new muscle to flex for sure.
Exactly. I felt like throughout production, I've been like going through this, like, oh, get this mask off me. And then also like, I'm so grateful that I have this mask on me. Because you're just like, we wouldn't get to do this if producers hadn't figured it out, if our guilds hadn't figured it out. And it's so amazing to get to create our art and still do our jobs during such a crazy time.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So I want to just lob a question over to you because I'm so interested because I've met you at this point of your career. And so I see you, the work that you're doing now, but I want to know like how you sort of got your start in the business and what led you to jump into this wild west that we work in.
For sure. Yeah. For me, I'm originally from Texas and my family is Nigerian. I was born here, but still raised in a very Nigerian household. And if you know anything about Nigerian families, it's like you're a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or a disappointment. I think Yvonne Orji has that in her stand-up. Literally never identified with something more because I know I went to Stanford, which is not a school that's known for comedy writing. And when I was there, I told my parents like, oh, I think I want to be a lawyer. And I was fully lying to them. And at one point they were like, so when are you taking the LSAT? And I was like, I graduate tomorrow. So I don't know. But while I was at Stanford, I took my first screenwriting class during spring quarter of my senior year. and something just kind of clicked. I had always been like this creative kid. Like I did theater and I wrote plays and I even shot short films when I was in high school. But I was always like, this is just a hobby I have. Like I don't know what you do with this. And it wasn't until that screenwriting class that we had a teacher who actually was like, oh, people make money like writing. That's a thing. And I was like, oh, and also the technical side of it, the producer side of it, getting to write what you see and determine what goes on screen, both of those things together, the technical meets the creative, really appealed to me in a way that other types of writing didn't as much. And so after I graduated, I moved abroad for almost 2 years. I lived in France and I was like working at this little sandwich shop and interning.
You speak French?
Oui, un petit peu, mais pas trop.
Oh, so impressive. I love it.
Like I've lost a lot of it, but yeah, so I was living abroad and writing. And after my visa expired and I moved back, I just realized like this is what I wanted to do. And it took me a long time to figure out what the path was, like being an assistant and all those things. I didn't quite know because I didn't come from the industry. I didn't know anyone. And so it was a little bit of a planning time when I first moved back to the States. And I was like, how do I figure this out? But, you know, I'm a hustler by nature, Nigerian. And so and a Virgo, fiance status. So I really like tried to figure it out. And then I was like, okay, if these are the things that make you successful, then these are the things I'm going to do. Yeah. And you're originally from Philly, right? So how many people in entertainment did you know growing up?
I'm from St. Louis.
Oh.
Which so I'd never like considered I truly remember the day that I found out that people wrote the words that were on the TV shows that I watched. I did not know that. Yep. And that was so interesting. I was like, oh, so they're not making it up on the spot. I mean, I guess that makes sense when I think about it, but I just never thought about it. Same. And so I grew up in St. Louis and my parents both come from like my dad's family has a lot of siblings and they're all really super successful, but mostly ministers. And my dad is a professor and a poet. And so I had sort of the foundation laid for kind of having a more off the beaten path career. Because my dad was that child in his family. And so my parents were super supportive and always were like, try your best. I think my mom kind of had her thumb on the scale for me to be a doctor. But I am not blessed with STEM and math and science skills. So that would not be good for anyone. So I went to college and I went to a liberal arts school because I wanted to get a liberal arts education because I thought I wanted to maybe teach or be a writer or perform or something. I wasn't sure. And I got into improv comedy in college and I really enjoyed performing. And then I moved to New York City. And like you, I didn't know a ton about the business as it exists really in LA because I started in unscripted. So I did an internship at VH1 that I got from a trustee at my college who helped me get an interview. And so I did a summer internship. And then I very audaciously recommended one of my housemates that I was living with for a production assistant job because she had graduated and they hired her because she's fantastic. And then she worked there for the whole year that I was finishing college. And then she got promoted and I got her job. So I started as a production assistant back in the day when we used like actual beta tapes. I would like run tapes up and down the street in Times Square in New York. And I worked my way up as a producer, all the while taking sketch and improv comedy writing and performance classes. And after a certain point, they kind of merged when I became a producer on a show called Best Week Ever. And I then became a staff writer on that show and have been writing by trade ever since then. But I'm so grateful for those years that I spent purely as a producer and making things work, on the fly and understanding how money plays into things and resources and timing, because now, as you know, as you move up as a writer, you become once again more on the hook for producing. And I feel so grateful that I wasn't sort of thrown into the deep end without any context.
Yeah, exactly. It is like a really great training ground. And even that it's that same thing, like getting that technical foundation actually helps the creative, at least in this field where everything's moving so fast and everything's so scheduled, it really helps.
Totally.
So I hear like when you started feeling like a writer from a professional standpoint, but even going backwards, like when did you feel creatively? Like when was the first thing that you wrote that you creatively were like, I think I'm a writer? When did that happen?
I wrote the first sketch I ever wrote was a parody of the show Sister Wives that I hope they never take it off the air because I will watch it until the wheels fall off. I've been watching it for a decade. And I just had on my spirit, I was like, I want to write a parody of this show. And I wrote it and I got a friend to produce it and I got friends to be in it. And that was the first time where I was like, oh, I can do the thing. I don't have to just like think about it or talk about it, but I can do the thing. And I felt so fulfilled and excited by all aspects of it that I was like, oh, wow, like this, I want to do this all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
That's so
about
beautiful,
you?
getting your friends together to like just make it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel the same way. For me, it was high school. There was I went to, when I was in high school, it's just a public high school, but it was called Allen High School, and our mascot was the Eagles, and we were the Allen Eagles. And I wrote a parody about our school where it was Fallon High School and the Fallon Beagles. And I just made fun of all the faculty, and my friends and I performed it for my theater class. And our theater teacher was like, you can never perform that again, or I'm going to lose my job because it's so accurate. And I was like, oh, and I didn't know what satire was. And she was like, this is satire, and you can't make fun of the principal in a play. And I was like, oh. And I remember being like, but it's good. And feeling this like pride and sort of like anger that she would let me perform it again. And I was like, well, we're going to make our own stuff. And my friends and I started making short films. And that's sort of how, just creatively, even as a kid, I it's the same thing. Like you're just doing it because you want to. And even the end goal wasn't even in mind yet. I was sure, like, I was like, maybe I'll be a nurse or a lawyer, but it was still something that I just wanted to do. And I did it. And I think that indie spirit feels a lot like sketch and improv, like your background and mine as well. Like, just get it going.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting that like we have in common that thing where it's like, even though doing things outside of the system, right? Outside of an existing system or structure, and be like, okay, but there's this thing I really want to do, and making it happen. And that being that click moment, because it's very hard in a lot of ways, even when it's easy, but it's hard to be like, okay, here's this thing I really want to do. And I don't have to do it because no one's asking me to do it, but I just really want to. And that is how you sometimes stumble upon your passion.
Exactly. It does feel that way. And it feels like when you've started that way, it never quite goes away. Because I think that's what development is, right? Like, it's
Absolutely.
kind of like, I just have this idea that I want to tell this story. No one's paying me. I'm just going to do it.
I'm just going to do it. And I'm going to spend literal days and weeks of my life just musing about it.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of musing about things, because we've both been in development, like Lauren recently, it was announced that she sold a pitch to ABC about a great idea for a show called that's based on a UK format. And I recently sold something too to HBO Max. But when these announcements come out, it's always after you've been working on it for a long time. Yeah. How long would you say, development wise, like getting from like, oh, I think I have an idea, to, oh, it's ready to pitch? Would you say, in general, for you, do you feel goes by?
In general, I just hit my mic. In general, I think for me, it feels like a solid median range is a year. Like on the long end, like the show that I sold to ABC, I had been in talks with them before we started season 1 of a Black Lady sketch show.
Oh my God.
And it only came out a couple months ago. So that was super long. And then other things that are coming down the pike happened a little quicker, but they haven't been announced yet. So it's, it really feels, it's quite a journey. How about you?
Exactly the same. I constantly, it feels like, especially obviously announcements are good for our career, but when they happen, people will be like, so if you're hiring, and I'm like, we ain't there yet.
We're not there yet.
It's like, oh, I'm still writing it or whatever, but it's like, there's a research phase, there's the finding the producer, it's making sure your tastes align, it's figuring out all the in-between parts. And I feel like the part of this industry that isn't always uniquely shared is the relationship side of it, and I don't want to say people management, but more like the so I don't know what the phrase is that I'm looking for, but so much of there's like 40% of it is writing and 60% of it is people.
Yes.
And like all of that people time is what often takes a really long time to get to the writing.
Absolutely. And it's like people time on so many different levels. It's about like at one level for a lot of people who are watching this, as you're starting your career and starting to sort of think like, okay, I like this part of the business. I like this part of the business. The people that you take classes with and that you make things on the side with and all that stuff are the people that you rise with. You know, those are the people that become your future collaborators when you're getting a paycheck and stuff. Yeah, exactly. And on the other end of it, it's like, you know, part of our gig, at least from my perspective, is being like, okay, how do I, when I have that first meeting with someone or when I'm pitching someone, make them see who I am and appreciate who I am so that they trust me with the story and trust my authority to give a take on it. Because I don't think that people are in the business of being like, oh, that person seemed like they had no idea what was going on in the world. Let me give them money to write a show. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's about being trying to be the most capable, well-rounded, whole person I can be, so that when I come up with something, it feels very authentic and real and exciting. And then all the other stuff that it's like, you know, convincing people and finding the right fit for a director or whatever. But it is like you put a lot of people time. It's a great way of framing it.
It is so much of it. And yet I think you brought up something really great about the idea of networking across. Like when you're starting out, I think there's a lot of energy spent, if not wasted, on trying to network up to people who already have the job you want, or even above the job you're looking for. Like, let me talk to the head of the studio. Let me talk to a showrunner. Let me talk to, you know, president of Comcast. And it's like, hold on, what about talking to the people right next to you? Because I always feel like so many of my best like career opportunities have come from my peers, from assistant jobs to producer jobs have come from people I know or people I know speaking on behalf of me. And just to that, I mean, like you and Robin had worked together for a really long time. Where did you guys meet, and did you meet in a professional context, and how did that meeting lead to a Black Lady Sketch Show?
Robin and I met for the first time in a professional context. And when I tell you, literally, I applied to be a staff writer on her late night show. And I went into the meeting, and I was so thrilled to even have gotten a meeting because I didn't have an agent or any kind of reps, and nobody knew me. Like, it wasn't like a friend of a friend. Somebody forwarded me the packet, the writing submission packet, and I submitted it. And I only sent it in because I said, I just want them to have my information for when they hire the next time. Because I was like, there's no way they're going to hire me, some random lady that they didn't ask to submit for this. So I got a meeting, and I was like, boom, great, mission accomplished. Perfect. That's all I wanted. And I went to the meeting, and it was with Robin and with 4 other people. And Robin and I talked like we were the only 2 people in the room the whole time. Like, we just immediately hit it off. It felt like meeting like a kindred spirit, truly, in comedy and in life, and just feeling so gotten and seen. And she was someone I admired and had watched on the nightly show and had followed her career, but meeting her as the person, I was just like, wow, okay, I was like, that felt like it went really well, you know, from my perspective. And I was like, maybe I'm delusional, but then I got the job. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm not as delusional as I thought. And then when I started writing for a show, it just really felt like a really great connection. Like, we really understand each other. And I felt like I understood her voice really well. And I think she agreed. And so I became the head writer of that show. And then when she sold and created a Black Lady Sketch Show, she, in typical Robin fashion, she lifts as she climbs. And she invited me to come on that journey with her. And a lot of people talk about like how they, you know, are, you know, elevating people and are a champion for people. And she is someone who truly does it in every aspect of everything that she does. And that is why I am sitting here pretty much. So it truly was a godsend to meet her.
Yeah.
I
That's
want to ask
amazing.
you, so what's really cool about your background is that you worked on the web series Awkward Black Girl. So tell me
Mhm.
about what your role was on the web series and how it's different now and how it's been to experience the trajectory from web series to critically acclaimed hit HBO television show, executive producer of. Like, that's
Yeah.
wild.
Oh, thank you. And I mean, like, it's so similar to what your journey is. It's so, I mean, like, I'm certain that's why they're like, you guys sit down, chat. Because again, it's like those great opportunities coming from your peers. Like, Issa and I went to the same college. I didn't really know her at school, but I knew friends of hers and was really close friends with Tracy Oliver, who co-created or produced Awkward Black Girl with Issa. And so Tracy emailed me one day out of the blue while I was in grad school at UCLA studying screenwriting. And she was like, we're hiring writers for Awkward Black Girl. Do you want to submit? And my email response was something like, bitch, I know you, that's my submission. And she was like, congrats, you've been hired. And then like, I looked up the series because I hadn't seen it because I'm like in grad school, like busy as fuck. And I looked up the series and I watched it and I felt like goosebumps all over me because it felt like it was about me. You know, like I'm an awkward
Absolutely.
Black girl. Like I grew up in
Absolutely.
all white neighborhood, always felt out of place. And so I quickly sent Tracy a follow-up email and I was like, thank you so much for accepting me. Like, I'm so honored and humbled. And like, this will be a great opportunity. I won't let you down. And da da da. And on that show, we had a writer's room of four. So I always say, like, that was my first writer's room experience. In fact, my very first one was in college, co-writing a musical for school. But this was my first like professional writing experience because the show got picked up by Pharrell's YouTube channel and we were all paid. Not much, but we were paid. And so our writer's room was in my living room every other
What?
Wednesday. Yeah, yeah, in my West Hollywood apartment. I lived in this like crazy condo that was all updated, like fancy people lived there, but my unit was like not
Wow.
updated. So it was super cheap. So I had this huge living room. And so we all met in my living room. And I was like, so that was a big change. And for that, I maybe went to set for that like twice. But every time after completing season two, every other professional writing job I got, I would always stay in touch. I would always email Issa because it was the same thing. It was like this kindred energy of hardworking. We had the same sort of like joke structure, like kinship with comedy that I really liked. I
Hmm.
got her voice like very well, I would say, and I just wanted to write for her. And so every job I got, I'd always email her and be like, okay, I'm working over here now. And she's like, oh, one day you won't know my name. And I was like, no, I'm telling you because I want to work for you again. And I know you're going somewhere far and I want to be beside you. And
Yes,
so
let's do it together.
exactly. I never wanted to be, it comes to that thing where like, even when I was starting out, I just never wanted to be asking for something that it wasn't clear that I should have. And so I never wanted to be like begging for handouts or something like that. I always wanted to say, I've got the goods. Do you want these goods? As opposed to help me. And that's just
Yes.
me like overcompensating. I think sometimes as women, we tend to like do a little beyond the job to get the job
Hmm.
as opposed to trusting our potential. But I will say, I do think that paid off because by the time Insecure got picked up, I had written for two HBO shows at that point. So I was already in the HBO family. So I think it wasn't a hard sell for her to be like, hey, maybe this writer you've already trusted before.
Exactly. Could maybe do this show.
Yeah. So yeah, but it was a learning curve. I actually say a lot within the walls of Insecure, but I'll say it here. I'm always like, Insecure is a teaching hospital because we all had never done it before. We've done it as web series. Like I wrote and produced my own web series too. And like, but we got there and they would ask questions and then we'd be in a meeting and they'd ask a question and everyone's like looking at me and I'm like, is that for me? And they're like,
Is that a me
yes,
question?
producer. And I'm like, oh, I I'm gonna think about it. I was just always so it was like a learning curve, and I really had to learn on the job. But I just think that is so remarkable to have the opportunity to learn on the job. We had a first time director in Melina Natsukis. She had directed a ton of music videos, but never TV. We had a first time showrunner in Prentice Penny, a first time TV star in Issa Rae. Like everyone was learning, and what a beautiful place to learn because it was so supportive and wonderful. So yeah, I feel in some ways the same I felt on Awkward Black Girl, like super supported, super seen. And yeah, closing out this chapter and getting to direct in the final season and come back to a first love of mine is also really special.
And I want to point out, and this is very much like, preaching to the choir, but I do think it's so beautiful and very noteworthy that you pointed out that in Melina that you had a first-time director, in Issa you had a first-time TV star, and you had a first-time producer, in Prentice you had a first-time showrunner, and every single person on that list is truly iconic, and not a single person that you named was not overly prepared for that role. It's not like you called in people that had never done the work, that didn't prepare for it. Like every single person in that scenario, yes, it was their first time with the official role, but it really says something about how sometimes those opportunities are hoarded away from us or aren't necessarily freely given as they should be. When you have, when you think about the names on that list, like you guys were born ready for those roles, like that sounds like a veteran team. And so it's just really beautiful. And I hope that people remember that.
Yeah, I love that you said that because it's true. I think as Black people, as women, as Black women, it's like we don't often get chances taken for us. Like people don't often give us chances. But because we're always like so ready to be told no, we over prepare. We're always 100%. Ready. Yeah. So that's something that I think is really great. And I also think in terms of the idea of building while you climb, like that you have so graciously said about Robin, and I think can also be said of you. I think the Insecure camp is like that too. And that all comes from Issa, someone who truly is like, I can't be the only one. I can't be the only one. So let's make some more.
Yes. And that is a key and a core value that I encourage everyone who's watching to take with them, which is that you don't ever want to be the only one. I never want to be the only one. And I never want to be the smartest one and most capable one in the room. That means I've done something wrong. I don't want to be in a room where I feel like, oh, I could do all of this by myself. Because that means that I'm not doing work at the level I want to be doing it at. Like I want to be learning from the people in the room. I want to be reaching for the people in the room. I want to be challenged by the people in the room. And that is a perspective that I think has really helped me not ever settle and like helped keep me invigorated about, my career.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to echo that as well, because I think we're taught, and it was maybe like a 90s reflex because there often was only one Black show and one Black writer in every room. And so it felt like it's you or it's me. And I have been working my entire career. And the reason I believe so much in mentorship of other writers is to stomp out that philosophy that it's not you or it's me, it's you and it's me,
me and it's somebody else.
Yes. And it's somebody else. Success isn't pie. If I take a slice, it doesn't mean there's no more pie,
Correct.
Like there's always more. There are 500 channels.
Yes. And in fact, success multiplies. Like if we look at the sort of, like I said, not good at math and science, but as cells divide basically. But if you think of Insecure as a cell and you think about how many projects you're working on coming out of this, how many projects Issa is working on coming out of this, how many projects so many of the writers in the room are working on and actors on the show, like that, the success is only multiplied.
And Robin's show that was produced by Issa. It's like boom, 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 boom.
Exactly.
I think you're a scientist. That was science to me. I liked it.
Oh man. Oh my word.
I think it's about time to go to our Q&A.
Yeah.
I think I saw in the chat. So maybe we'll welcome up our first questioner, Millie.
Yes, let's do it.
Hi, ladies. Hi. So nice to virtually meet you guys. I'm super excited to talk to you guys. We both work on shows that I love. And just seeing Black women who are so successful within this industry is super inspiring to me. So thank you so much for being here today. My question, I'll introduce myself. I graduated from New York University last May with a degree in journalism and Africana studies. And my question It pertains to my particular experience, but I'm sure other people can relate to it as well. I've been actually looking to pivot into the entertainment industry, specifically through screenwriting and producing and things of the sort. Because I don't really have too much experience, professional experience in it, because that's not what I went to school for. I haven't really had much success in terms of all the applications I've been doing. And it's coming up a year from my graduation. I've gotten offers within journalism and other fields that they just don't really align with what my desires are for my career. But being unemployed isn't fun. So I was wondering, in you guys' professional experience or opinion, if it's best for me to kind of hold out for positions, entry-level positions that could give me that experience that I need to continue in what I want to do, or maybe put that on the back burner and focus on what's in front of me so I can meet, more immediate needs. It's just something that I've been going back and forth with for a while now.
Well, so Millie, let me ask you, what is your ultimate goal? Like, is it to write like on a sitcom? Is it to write a movie? Is it to if you imagine that endpoint, what is it?
My ultimate goal would definitely be to write for movies, and even go into directing.
Got you. So I think, Amy, you probably have a better roadmap, I think, than I do, but I think that as far as immediate needs are concerned, I spent the bulk of the beginning of my career doing work. Like I worked in the business, but I basically always tell people, like, I started as a production assistant, which I wanted to be like, a writer, but I was like, okay, that's not quite where I want to be, but it's close, right? So it's like in the same vicinity. And then it's just my way to like kind of inch when it's right for me as far as survival and, having to pay my bills is concerned. How do I get as close to it as I can? And so that might be working in a newsroom. That might be starting with print writing because you have a journalism background. I have a sister who started as a print writer and she's now a sitcom writer, and she does both, but she started in print, in digital print. So finding those places to get close to where you want and inch your way there while also keeping your, personal survival very much in your brain and intact.
Yeah, I really agree with that, because I think for me, look, again, a hustler, Nigerian, child of immigrants, Virgo, I'm like, do both. Like, get the job that pays you and direct. You told me you want to be a director. You can have a job and direct. There are weekends, so for me, I'm just like, do both, pay your bills and do your passion. Because if we just wait for our passion to come true, we're actually decaying opportunities that could be feeding the passion and introducing us to people we don't even know we need to meet to get to the passion. Some of the best people I met, one of my mentors, I met because I was volunteering at a school that her kids went to. And I ran into her, and she was a Black TV writer. She wrote for the show Justified. And upon first meeting her, she invited me to come to set and shadow her. I would never have met her had I not just been doing something else that I liked. So I think if you don't hate journalism, you studied it for 4 years, if it's something that even remotely interests you and also can pay the bills, I would say do that, and also take writing classes on the side, and
Absolutely.
also get your friends together and direct, and also invest in your other passions. Because why not? You might find something incredible from that journalism path that feeds stories you want to tell as a director and a writer.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys so much. That was super helpful.
No problem. Our next question comes from Connie Tice.
Hi. Thank you so much. My name is Connie Tice. I graduated last May from Hofstra University in Film Studies and Production and Drama. And wow, this is so amazing. Thank you so much for this panel. So I mostly done film editing, but I also have the writing bug. So my question is, how do you find your voice as a writer? How do you know that, find your confidence in what you're doing and you can call yourself a writer?
I think for me, if I'm not energized or entertained by something that I'm doing, then truly there is no point. Because if even I am lukewarm on it, then how can I possibly convince someone else to be hot on it. You know what I'm saying? So like, I always write for an audience of me. And then beyond that, I write for an audience of my sisters, because my sisters are my best friends and my tastemakers. And so I think about the people that are important to me. And I think about the things that, you know, I wish I could see and that I don't. And then I do it. So that is what helps me find my voice, because then I'm like, I'm the only me that exists. And so if I write from a place that truly is thrilling to me, no one else can do that. And that is, there's no one else can start from that same place. And so that is how I maintain my, you know, my voice, I think, by really focusing on things that feel like, it sounds self-centered, but I think it has to come from a real place.
I agree with that. And I would only add, the other way to know your voice, if you're into comedy at least, is to hear it. So when you've written something, having friends, or if you do improv or sketch, actual actors reading your words to you, if they laugh, it works. If they don't, it doesn't. So it's sort of like getting to hear it and hear the rhythm of how you write and the rhythm of what your jokes sound like. That really helped me kind of nail in on a comedy voice.
Absolutely.
So I would recommend that too.
Thank you so much.
Of course. And next we have,
yes.
Oh, sorry.
Go no, please. Gwen is up next. We have another question. Hi, Gwen.
Hi there. Thank you so much for coming to speak with us. It's such an honor to be able to hear from both of you. My name is Gwen. I am a current junior at Stanford, and I'm studying international relations and human rights. Yes. So, Amy, my question is more directed towards you. As someone who's in the later half of her career, you know, over the course of the pandemic, I really realized how integral an undeniable part creativity and art making has been to like my personhood. And I realized that I also am equally passionate about making art, acting, directing, writing, as I am in like political work. And I'm wondering, as someone else who didn't really focus on creativity and like breaking into the entertainment industry throughout your undergraduate career, what was it like to have to like jump through a bunch of hoops, and how did you work your way up? What experiences ended up being most valuable to you?
Yeah, and I'll start by saying my extended advice to you is going to be something similar to Millie. Like, what you majored in ultimately doesn't quite matter, you know, and it's great that you majored in it because now you have stories to tell about that. You know, so everything is story. So all of that time was not wasted. The fact that you went and you majored in something that isn't writing, it is not wasted. It was a Stanford alum who told me the most important thing you can do as an undergrad is not major in film, but major in what you want to make films about. So the things that you've studied will be fruitful to you. All through Stanford, I worked at nonprofits. What does Issa's character do season 1 of the show? Works for a nonprofit. So I had stories, you know, so it's like everything you've done is story. So never look back and regret and be like, oh, I should have majored in theater. No, you did the right thing. You can always learn more theater. So that's what I'll say first. And then the second part, making the transition, a lot of research. Google is your friend. And I went to my friend Google and was like, how do you become a writer? And I literally like did the research just like a Stanford student would, and like figuring out how to write an essay at the last, you know, in the last 6 hours before it's due. And I buckled down and I researched and I made a roadmap for myself in Excel. Like I was like, okay, so for it's going to take me this long to do this. It's going to take me this long to do this. And I started making a roadmap for myself. And of course, as life happens, those things, those dates and timelines that you put adjust. Like when we were 12, we're all like, when I'm married and I have 2 kids when I'm 25, and now we're like, what are we talking about? So it's like those timelines will adjust. It's not failure. It's just you realizing that you need more things or that you want more things. So I think sometimes it's about making it a tactile roadmap, kind of like a vision board, and putting it down on paper. So it's not just swirling in your head and feels like a dream. Make it practical. And once you've done that, I think you will start to feel like there is a path from where you are now to where you want to be.
Thank you so much.
Of course. And next up is Artis.
Oh my gosh, you got the name perfect. Thank you.
I did? Oh!
Yes, you're so good. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm trying not to fan out. Hello, thank you so much, Lauren and Amy, for being here today. My name is Bao. graduate of the University of Richmond, currently living in LA, and I'm a screenwriter. And I have so many questions like, how do you like your coffee? How can I be your assistant? But my question for today is, can you just talk about the most difficult deadline that you had to meet during your career, particularly around the start of your career, if you could, and then how you met and overcame that challenge?
Okay, so when I did the writer submission packet for the Rundown with Robin Thede, usually for late night shows, the packets are very timed. Like they say you have to give stories or jokes or pitches for the week of X date to X date. And it's usually 5 days. And the packet is due like at the end of the 5th day because they want to know that you can write on a deadline. I was forwarded the packet on Saturday and it was due on Monday. And at the time I was working on Watch What Happens Live, during which we work on Sundays. So I had to do 2 shows on Sunday and Monday. It was a very busy time. So I stole every moment from Saturday that I could to do the packet because I was like, there's no way I'm not doing this packet. And I, by some miracle, finished it. I had to write a bunch of jokes. I had to write a short sketch and a longer sketch, and I had to submit pitches for a field piece when like the host goes out, you know, and interviews people. And on my car ride to Watch What Happens Live at about 3:00, I was sitting in the car and I got an idea for a better sketch for my finished packet, and it was due at 5. And I still had to write my Watch What Happens Live script. And I was like, crap. I thought to myself, I was like, if I don't put this sketch in the packet, I'm going to regret it. So I have to figure out a way to make it work and get my Watch What Happens Live work done. I wrote the sketch. I sent it at 4:59 when it was due at 5:00 on the dot. And that sketch got me the job. And it was the first sketch that we filmed for the Rundown when it went into production. And it was named like one of the top 10 late night moments of that year. And that was the hardest deadline because I was writing basically on 2 computers, like trying to finish the sketch and the Watch What Happens Live packet. And I was like, oh my God. I like hid away in a corner so that none of my coworkers knew where I was. And I felt so relieved when I turned it in, but it was a squeaker.
Yeah. That is like
inspirational.
Yeah, I'm like sweating. It's so
heart palpitation.
And I will say, I think maybe you've heard about all of these like fellowships that happen like in May, like the Disney Fellowship, the WB Fellowship, all of those. Those always come out at the same time, and they're really good practice for writing spec scripts, which is basically like what it is to be a TV writer. You're writing a spec of the show you work on. So it's really good practice. They're a way in, not the way in. But I kept applying.
They were my deadlines last year.
Exactly. I had a feeling. And so they're like, the year that I applied, you submitted with a spec. And then a little later through, like in August, they're like, oh, we'd also like a pilot and we'd like it by tomorrow. And I was like, what? Like, I don't know. And so literally went through like old pilots I'd written and they were trash. And I pulled one up that was less trash. And I was like, well, if I can at least punch up the first 5 pages, because they will start it, but they might not finish it. So that was what I did. And that like last 24 hours was I just made the first 5 pages as funny as possible and submitted that. And then I also sent it to my writers group, which was my tribe, like my 4 closest writer friends, and was like, guys, what do you think? And they're like, we have questions about your second act. And I was like, fuck the second act, focus on the first.
Don't worry about the second act.
It's not about the second act.
It's not about the second act. And luckily, like I did get it turned in, and then I didn't get into the program, but I was named an alternate, like a finalist and then an alternate. And it did boost my confidence. It made me at least know, like, okay, you don't suck completely. And then the next year I did better. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Good luck with the deadlines. And next up is Mhegan.
Hi, hello, how you doing? Thank you guys so much. I am extremely grateful for being here today. Thank you guys again. I am a double major at City College at CCNY. I study PR and advertising and theater, and I minor in the PCP program. And at the same time, I also curate my own projects as well. I have written several short films. I've written a film myself. I actually got an opportunity to shoot it out in the Caribbean. And I also have been in the local film circles for a while. And I have a lot of experience writing and directing and producing. And I'm just looking to know, as well as with my other peers that I have, and how can we level up and better ourselves, and how can we get actually, you said, to work with get a job, like a writing job. So I wrote that down, like a professional writing job. And how can we make those connections really, for say, because I tried, and it being like, you know, for example, like if you're not really like if you don't really have the credibility, like no one from like Netflix, they won't join you on the team, or, you know, Comedy Central to be a writer. So how can you let them know, like, hey, I have the experience, I'm in the local circles, and I'm trying to bust out? Like, how can we do it?
That's a tough question, I think, because I feel like, as you probably heard Lauren and I say, like, we came up through the assistant ranks, and part of it was humbling yourself a bit to know, even though I believe I have the goods, there's clearly something I am missing since I haven't made it yet. So let me fill in those blanks by me. Because what I would love to do for you, Mhegan, is not look out and say, why won't they notice me? Why won't they give me permission? Why won't they let me in? What can I do? I can't control them, you know? So what can I do? So I always throw it back on myself. Okay, I have not been noticed. What more can I do? I am not in the rooms. What do the people who are in the rooms have that I don't have? Okay, let me work on that. Because all you can control is you. So that's what I would say.
Absolutely. And to elaborate on what Amy said, is that it's really important to focus on the rung above you, like on the ladder. Like when I was first starting out and I was doing performance and stuff, I was like, okay, there are people who I think are really great, quick, awesome improvisers. And I was like, what are they doing? So I asked them, I was like, what are you doing? And they said, oh, I'm in XYZ classes and XYZ practice groups. And I was like, okay, XYZ classes and XYZ practice groups. I didn't go up to Maya Rudolph and say, okay, how did you get on SNL? Because that was like way more steps than I was prepared for. And so really focusing on that next puzzle piece and just sort of laying down the lily pad right in front of your feet, and then get to the next one, and then get to the next one. And then I also think that as you start to figure out what kinds of jobs will get you in the right rooms, really focus on, like Amy said before, like as someone who hires, I always get a little on my, back up a little bit when someone says they're looking to learn a lot, because if I'm hiring you to pay you to do a job so that this machine that we work on together runs more smoothly. And it is very much a teaching hospital, as Amy said, but it's also about being very clear and knowing yourself and knowing what you offer that no one else can offer that gets you in the door. Yes. People are less likely to want a student than they are to want a badass, Like how do you come in the room and bust the door down?
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, and I think we have to take our last question now. So it will be no problem. Thank you. It'll be from Gabrielle Burton. Sorry, I kind of lost track of time. Sorry about that.
Hi guys, my name is Gabrielle Burton. First, I really wanted to start off by just saying thank you for being here. I was really nervous and gearing myself up for this, because it's just, you have no idea what it means to see you, two dark-skinned Black women of color, in the positions that you are in television. It's like, it's a dream fully realized. So I really appreciate you. Just your existence and presence says so much and does so much for many people. So thank you. My name is Gabrielle Burton. I am currently a graduating senior at Cal State University of Northridge in Los Angeles. I am a cinema and television arts major, and specifically with an emphasis in screenwriting. And my question was about getting into the room, selling and pitching a script for a series, specifically, basically, what does a writer's room look like? for someone that is a new writer, for someone that's a writer's assistant, and maybe even for someone that's a showrunner, because I'm an aspiring showrunner as well. So yeah, my main question is just, what does that look like? And what can you do to put your best foot forward and to pitch your show when you're like selling yourself and selling your show?
Yeah, those are great questions. I think there are a few questions there. I think, what does it look like? What does a room look like as a writer's assistant, or as a staff writer, or as a showrunner? I'll take that first and say, as a writer's assistant, your main job is to support the writers. You're typing notes all day, everything that the writers say, every joke they say, the pitches they land on, you're typing them. So if you can get your typing speed up, you can take typing classes online to get really fast. Put that on your resume. I also think a lot of it is assistant work, but you're actually a writer's apprentice. You're not just there to take notes. You're also there to soak up what the room is like for the writers, and seeing like, oh, there's a hierarchy here, and not to say like a hierarchy in that certain people's ideas are worth more, but more that the showrunner tends to be the person who decides what we land on. The staff writers very often are pitching jokes or scenarios or joke areas more than they're pitching story. The mid-level writers are more so pitching the connectors and story beats. And some rooms are different, but that's just a general vibe. So as a writer's assistant, you are soaking all of that in so that you're prepared when you become a writer. There's no way, and I'll say this as someone who is a writer's assistant and then even a script coordinator, there's no way to fully feel what it feels like until you're in the seat. There's just no way. Even when I did my MFA, they did a screenwriter training program and we ran a room. And I was like, I've run a room. And then I got to be a writer and I was like, oh, my head is doing gymnastics all day long. I feel like a fucking psycho. I'm always so scared that I'm offending someone. I'm sweating constantly. There's no way. But at least as a writer's assistant, you can at least see the lay of the land and give yourself some perspective on how it works, which is super valuable. And then the second part of the question, I think I lost.
I think it was about pitching shows, which I think that by nature of once you get in the room, you'll understand that. I think the overarching theme, because I could say 1,000 things, but the overarching thing is like pitch with confidence and pitch with intention, and have a real clear arc and beginning, middle, and end that's easy to follow when you listen to it. So making sure that your characters and their journeys and the words that you're using are very chartable and memorable, so that at the end of the pitch, someone's like, oh, like they have benchmarks and hooks to grab onto, so that when you leave the room, they're like, oh, that sentence, that like they're quoting things that you said.
Thank you.
Of course. So that's all the questions we have time for. Lauren, thank you so much for just sharing and being here and spending some time with me.
Same. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. This has been a true joy. And thank you to all of you for your questions. They were fantastic.